Joined now by Mike Bako. He's the managing sports editor of the dailynational.com. Let's start there, Michael. I was in Beijing earlier this year and outside the Bird's Nest, and it's such an incredible structure.
Absolutely.
It's once again going to be the site of the opening and closing ceremonies. Talk to me about the reuse of some of these facilities.
I think that's really the reality of Olympic cities now. The reuse of stadiums, of facilities. You're seeing it with the Los Angeles Olympics that are coming up that were awarded. But I think it's really the only feasible economic way for an Olympic city to pull something like this off. You're looking at the 2018 Olympics, Winter Olympics coming up in Pyeongchang, and they're about $3 to $4 billion over budget because they're basically building everything from scratch. Same thing a few years back with the Sochi Olympics. So Beijing, while they probably had some overruns in 2008, certainly now repurposing and looking at, as you were doing, the Bird's Nest Stadium, that beautiful architectural model to be reused for the closing and the opening ceremonies.
Mike, does this ruin the Olympic story that we always see every time the Olympics come around, which is there's delays, they're not getting everything ready in time? I mean, you've already kind of jump-started things by already having several of the venues ready.
Absolutely. They are doing it right, and with the awarding of the games for coming up, they are having a little bit of that head start. There's certainly going to be all sorts of construction hiccups. That's just the nature of these Olympic venues. I think one thing that is the Olympic story that is overriding everything in any city that these happen in, what happens to these facilities after the fact? You see it year after year after year, whether it's the Summer Olympics or the Winter Olympics. You go back 2 years later, even a year later, and these are empty, abandoned stadiums that cost more money to run and to keep open than they're actually bringing in with any sort of revenue. So that's really the Olympic story, and what Beijing is certainly trying to reverse engineer the model of hosting the games.
Well, let's continue on that path. Of the 12 proposed venue sites, 6 already in place. 6 will be built, but 3 were planned even if the games were not coming to China. So talk to us about China minimizing costs, also being considerate of sustainable development.
Right. I mean, I think you hit it right there on the head. They are being considerate about future planning and what can be used in the future. Possibly some of the plants not having as big of a venues in terms of spectator audience. So, can those be repurposed for other events that if you do have this big, huge stadium, and even if you're filling it halfway, it looks completely empty. If you're only building it to a certain capacity, you could use more of it in the future. So I think they've got that model down, reusing some of these existing facilities. And again, that's what future Olympic cities and what the International Olympic Committee might be looking at for future cities that are interested in hosting. Not going from absolutely nothing and trying to get up to speed. You saw the stories in Sochi up until literally the start of the games, not having the proper plumbing and infrastructure in the Olympic villages. That's something that they just want to avoid because that becomes the narrative for the beginning part of the games.
What makes China so interesting, we've talked about Beijing, but there's 2 other zones that are going to be used as well for Olympic contest. But what's great about China is the high-speed rail connecting all of them. Can you talk about that piece of the puzzle as well?
I think anytime you're able to have transportation infrastructure and you're not so centralized. Centralized is great, but it also leads to, a hard time with crowds. It also overcrowding, pollution, building things in a dense area where only that area can then benefit after the fact. Having these rail lines and having this transportation allows the spectators to get out to view these Olympic venues, but also allows other parts and other areas to get new infrastructure as well.
Yeah, one of the other benefits of being on the high-speed rail, you get to see the countryside where you might not if you're in a major city. Michael,
yes,
thanks so much. Always great to have you on with your insights.
Great being with you.